collaboration with the Pak-German Climate and Energy Partnership. They are leading this initiative, and also in collaboration with the New Climate Institute, especially today the title, as it is evident, it's the decarbonization of textile sector, especially in line with the upcoming European Union regulations, and also how the Article 6.4 or the overall carbon pricing instrument can be explored for this sector. We are really glad to have been joined by apologies, I'm receiving a call from a ministry. Just I would request my colleague Saira if she can get in touch. If you can please get in touch if there's any technical glitch so we can eliminate it. Thank you. So we are really glad that this discussion is happening now, and because as you know that climate extremes, it's not something that only Pakistan is facing. This is something that the entire world is facing, and just nowadays one of the most landmark and remarkable decision that has come out was from the International Court of Justice around climate justice, that now polluters should be penalized and they should be held accountable in context of how they are polluting in their emissions, because they do not recognize any borders. So the emissions are impacting vulnerable countries. So how they need to be held accountable, because this is a matter of basic human rights now. I think there's a lot happening in the global space, and that how we can leverage it in context of private sector engagement and the industry engagement. That is the important, and one of the important tools that can be leveraged is the decarbonization. So the objectives of this webinar include highlighting the practical decarbonization strategies across the textile sector. We are really glad to have been joined by two representatives from the industry who will be sharing the case studies. Also, to identify regulatory, institutional, and financial barriers. We were supposed to be joined by Madam Aisha Humaira Chaudhary, who's the Secretary Climate Change. I think she's running a bit late, but we are also glad that we have been joined by Mr. Mudassir Raza Siddiqui, who is the DG Textiles at Ministry of Commerce, to discuss this objective. Also to explore and assess how Article 6.4 of the Paris Agreement and explore how project-based carbon crediting can enable textile manufacturers to explore this further and to ensure decarbonization. We have experts from New Climate Institute to discuss this, Juliet, Chetna, Sarajit Iyer, and I think this is something that we can leverage on how good practices, best practices can be ensured by the industries in Pakistan. So thank you for joining. And also last but not the least, the EU regulations, not just CBAM, but we know there's Eco Design Directive, there is also ESPR, and then corporate sustainability. How in line of these regulations, the industry can survive, especially from developing countries like Pakistan. Now, this webinar also serves as the official launch of Pakistan's textile industry decarbonization roadmap. Now, Ms. Sobia Becker will be joining us shortly to discuss this further. But before her, I think we can take Mr. Wolfgang Hess, who's the cluster coordinator at GIZ, for his welcome remarks. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Zainab, and good afternoon, distinguished guests. I hope you can understand me clearly, that the acoustics are okay.
Apologies, I can't hear you. Just a minute.
Hello, hello?
Yes, we can hear you now.
Yes, good afternoon again, and thank you very much, Zainab, for the opportunity. Distinguished guests, I think we are 70 by now already. This is very good news. And my name is Wolfgang Hesse. I'm the cluster coordinator of GIZ Pakistan for climate and climate change. I would like to welcome Ms. Aisha Moriani. I don't know if she's already here, but for sure she will come. She's the secretary at the Ministry of Climate Change and Environmental Coordination. Then I saw already Mr. Mudassir Raza Siddiqui. Welcome. Thank you very much for coming. Director General Textiles at the Ministry of Commerce. We have Mr. Sohail Pasha, Chairman of the Pakistan Textile Exporters Association. Respected colleagues from government, industry, and valued participants. It is a pleasure to welcome you all to this important webinar. on decarbonizing Pakistan's textile industry. I speak to you today on behalf of the Pakistani-German Climate and Energy Partnership, PGCEP, a long-standing collaboration committed to supporting Pakistan's climate and energy transition in close coordination with national institutions. This conversation is both timely and necessary. Pakistan's textile sector, an engine of national economic growth and employment, is at a critical juncture. As sustainability expectations rise across export markets, especially within the European Union, textile producers must navigate a new set of regulatory requirements. These changes present both pressure and opportunity. The pressure to comply and the opportunity to lead. Through our partnership with the Ministry of Climate Change and the Sustainable Development Policy Institute, SDPI, we are proud to support the official launch of the Pakistan Textile Industry Decarbonization Roadmap, a document that offers not just a vision, but a practical, phased strategy for navigating this transition. The roadmap responds directly to the realities of today's global trade environment, particularly, and Sandeep already mentioned it, the European Union's emerging regulatory framework, such as the ESPR, the Global Corporate Social Reporting Directive, and of course, the Carbon Border Adjustment Mechanism, CBAM. These frameworks are reshaping what competitiveness means in the international markets. Compliance is no longer optional, it is fast becoming a condition for market access. At the same time, transition finance opens doors for Pakistan manufacturers to access much needed climate finance and monetize emissions reductions, unlocking value from environmental leadership. What we launched today is not just a document, it is an invitation to industry, to policymakers, and to development partners to work collaboratively in unlocking sustainable growth. Under the partnership, we are actively supporting this transformation across multiple fronts, from decarbonizing energy supply chains and enabling carbon market readiness to facilitating climate-smart financing instruments. Our goal is to connect policy with practice. But we also know that the shift to a low-carbon textile industry cannot rest on technical interventions alone. It requires institutional alignment, private sector ambition, public policy clarity, and cross-sector coordination. That is why today's webinar is so critical. It brings together voices that need to be in the same room, decision makers, exporters, financiers, regulators, to align around a common agenda. Let me close by expressing our deep appreciation to all partners involved in this effort. The Pakistan-German partnership remains committed to working with public and private sector leaders to drive forward a competitive, resilient, and low-carbon textile industry. Thank you for joining us today. I look forward to the rich exchange ahead and the momentum it will generate. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Wolfgang. And indeed, the Pak-German Climate and Energy Partnership is really doing an amazing work in context of inviting all for collaboration and formation of such coalitions that can support decarbonization in the country. And this is how development partners should be inviting and encouraging collaborations and coordinations. And I'm sure that this roadmap will serve as a foundation for all other kinds of roadmaps that can support the decarbonization in Pakistan. Now, without further ado, I would like to invite Mr. Saqib Suhail, who is the lead responsible business projects at Artistic Milliners. It's a private sector industry and organization, and he will be representing the kind of decarbonization that they're practicing decarbonizing and how they're supporting this transition in Pakistan and what are the challenges that they face at this point. Mr. Saqib Sohail, over to you, please.
Everyone. Thank you so much, Dana, for inviting me for this webinar. Can I share my screen?
Yes, please. If I can request the IT team to give him the access so he can share the screen.
Thank you. All right. So I'll just start with Artistic Milliners. We are a denim producing company for the last many years, and we have our presence in many different countries. We have manufacturing primarily based in Pakistan, but we are also now manufacturing in the Western Hemisphere, in Mexico, Guatemala, as well as a factory in Los Angeles. And this comes together with a lot of challenges that we face being global. And before I begin, I'll just tell you a little bit about like what we do as responsible business department. Our main area of concern is, and this came from working with brands with the responsible sourcing departments, which means that everything that you do within your organization has to be done responsibly. So not only being responsible to the people, but also being responsible to the environment, to the communities, and to the product. And that gave an idea and the vision to our organization that how do we want to move forward with that. So as part of our ESG goals and vision, what we do is we divide it into three different parts. One is climate action, one is responsible production, and the third is community and worker well-being. So as part of which I know is a very, very ambitious target, considering the type of technology and resources available. And we
Saqib, your voice is breaking. Saqib, voice is breaking. I think there's some internet issues. Your voice is breaking, please. If you can try to reconnect.
Is it better now?
Yeah, it seems better now.
Is it okay now?
Yeah, it is okay now. You can proceed, please.
As I was saying, as part of the speed validation program, we are committed to become net zero by 2040. As part of
Saqib, I'm really sorry, but I think you should reconnect because we can't hear you. Your voice is breaking up. Maybe we can take Farheen first, and once your internet is stable, you can try rejoining.
Okay, let me reconnect.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Farheen Sahoor from Yunus Textile Mills. It's another case study that she will be presenting from Pakistan on how they're working around decarbonization. So Farheen, maybe there's some internet connectivity challenge at Saqib's end. So maybe you can proceed, and once he reconnects, we'll take the artistic's point of view. Over to you, please.
Thank you.
Yes, you can share your screen.
So, Assalamu alaikum everyone. I'm Farheen Zahoor, General Manager ESG at Yunus Textile Mills, and today I'm going to show you actions Yunus Textile Mills has taken in towards decarbonization, and also I'm also going to touch upon some of the challenges faced by the small and medium enterprises. So as I begin my presentation, I will be quickly covering the net zero commitment of Yunus Textile, the action towards decarbonization, our actions on EU legislation, and some challenges and opportunities. A little bit an introduction about Yunus Textile. Yunus Textile Mills is a subsidiary of Yunus Brothers, and we are in the business since past 73 years. And YBG is the largest conglomerate in Pakistan with a collective business of 2.9 billion annual turnover. Yunus Textile Mills particularly is amongst the top 10 exporter of home textile products in Pakistan, and we have a business turnover of 300 million with global presence into three countries, which USA, UK, and France. And at the bottom of the screen, you can clearly see that the group of companies YBG is holding. In terms of net zero commitment, Yunus Textile Mill was the first company way back in 2017 who commit to science-based targets. At that point in time, we had very little service providers and very little guidelines to submit scope 1, 2, and 3 goals and how to measure them. At this point in time, Yunus Textile Mill sustainable SBTi targets have been approved. We have our near-term and net zero targets. And in terms of industry, in Pakistan, there are 62 companies who have already committed to science-based target initiative. It is very important to know that there's, other than the large manufacturers, some medium enterprises have also committed to science-based targets. In terms of global commitments towards decarbonization and towards sustainability, we are part of UNGC. We are also supporting Fashion for Climate Change. We are also contributing to in UNFCCC and also part of Race to Zero. In terms of actions, what actions Yunus Textile Mills has taken in the renewable energy transition? I'm very happy to say that Yunus Textile Mill is one of the leading textile mills with massive renewable energy investments. At this point in time, we have on-site 19.2 megawatt wind turbine installed with $20 million investment. We have 75 TPH biomass boiler installed, and all our steam is generated through the biomass boiler. There is no presence of coal in our facilities, and we have 25 megawatt solar panel installed on all our rooftops to the point that we don't have space available on the rooftop for any more solar. And this is the largest capacity any textile mill has installed on site for solar or for wind. The impact of this renewable energy installation is that 89% of our steam is generated through biomass or renewable sources. Other than that, in energy efficiency, we are generating 18% energy from energy efficiency, mainly through waste heat recovery boilers. And all the impact on the decarbonization is that at this point in time, with all this investments, we have reduced our carbon footprint by 34% from 2021 baseline, which makes us quite close to our SBTi target. In terms of renewable energy, by fiscal year 27, we are aiming that we will have 49% of our energy generated from the renewable means. However, these steps are not enough to meet our science-based target commitments or the commitment which our buyers have forced on us, or rather imposed on us, which is be net zero by 2040 or become 100% renewable, use 100% renewable energy by 2030. As you know that Pakistan or the manufacturers in Sindh are mostly use natural gas as main source of their energy. In terms of our readiness on EU Green Deal, Yunus Textile Mill is the first company in the home textile division who has taken action on eco-design ESPR legislation. In December 2024, we pilot digital product passport on 7 of our running products, and we calculate their carbon footprint, and we also calculate some of the categories of LCA. And we got to know that with all this renewable energy investment, the carbon footprint of our product has also gone down, which we measure. And our sheet sets and comforters come under the low carbon footprint products. So we are very happy that we are not only making investments, but also translating them on our products and its carbon footprint. So here is some market intel as we are discussing textile industry. So in terms of 4 top textile manufacturers that are based in Karachi, the collective on-site investment in renewable energy is 150 megawatt, which is huge. And all this investment have been made by the manufacturers by their own capital investment. Amongst that, Yunus Textile Mills stand at the top with 44.6 megawatt on-site renewable energy investment. However, these efforts are not enough to decarbonize Pakistan or even Sindh textile industry. Why? Because we have a major portion of small and medium enterprises who does not have, firstly, the financial muscle to make these investments. Secondly, they cannot bear the higher cost of manufacturing. Thirdly, they don't have technical expertise, or the technical expertise are not in their means. They're expensive for them to adopt. So we need to focus on the small and medium enterprises and how we can decarbonize them. In terms of challenges and opportunities for the textile industry, we clearly see that the business environment at this point in time is quite challenging. There are new tariffs, new legislations come every day, and it becomes difficult to make investments from the manufacturer perspective, because we don't know how the business would look like in 1 year or 2 year or even 3 months times. In terms of technology, as I mentioned, that the biggest challenge for us is the replacement of natural gas, because we rely on natural gas, although it is very readily available in Pakistan, but it does not come as a renewable resource. So there is no reliable technology available for against natural gas. On the other hand, whatever technologies are available are expensive, and they're even expensive for the large manufacturers. So we cannot imagine the small or the medium enterprises to adopt them. In terms of nature-based solution for decarbonization, the feasibilities, the cost, investment time, and the tenure of these projects are quite costly. A minimum project will have a 20 years of a length, and the cost and the feasibility and the presence of local experts in the nature-based solution, they're also lacking. So if we transition now to nature-based solution, it's high cost, and it's difficult for the investor to take, and there are no certain returns on them. Definitely with these investments, there will be higher cost for manufacturer, because we have to increase manpower, create new jobs in sustainability, and acquire our teams with new technology to measure carbon footprint and understand all the science behind that. There is lack of knowledge also at the medium and small enterprises. And then if we don't take action, there will be definitely a cost of inaction in terms of carbon tariffs on high emission textiles and apparel products. There will be potential risk to GSP plus status if some certain things are tied to the sustainability commitment, and definitely a competitive disadvantage for Pakistani manufacturer, because there will be some companies who will take action before than us, and then they will be more desirable for our buyers, as business is not guaranteed by one. However, there are potential opportunities for exports. For example, there is a big business opportunity because Pakistan has natural resources and land which we can utilize to build our renewable energy transition. In terms of challenges, one of the which I forgot to cover here is the policy. There are tremendous gaps in renewable energy policy transition, which is creating a huge hurdle in companies making further investments. We all know that major textile exporters have made investments in wind parks and solar parks, and they're huge in capacity, but we are not able to bring back that renewable energy back on our operational side because of policy barriers. So we need policy support from the government, and this will not only help this will help the whole industry. In terms of opportunities, once the policy gaps will be addressed, there will be more opportunities in green investments and innovations because the renewable energy will become accessible. There will be tariffs, and it will be more regulated, and definitely a competitive advantage if we take action quickly, and which will definitely result in export revenue increase. And it will also contribute in Pakistan's NDCs because textile sector is the most active sector in terms of taking actions on decarbonization, and we are ahead than most of the other industries, and we can directly contribute to Pakistan NDCs. Thank you so much. That's the end of my presentation.
Thank you so much, Farheen. And that was really insightful to learn about so many amazing initiatives that Yunus Textile Mill is taking. And it's really good to learn that you have been proactive in context of the upcoming regulations, especially the eco-design directives. So we look forward to, acknowledging and also to the partnership that has opened the decarbonization roadmap and framework where we can collaborate and take this forward. So thank you for your insights. Now requesting Mr. Saqib Sohail, if your internet is restored and you would like to share your screen.
I hope it works better now. And I'll try to share the screen. And if it doesn't, then I'll not share the screen and just talk about what we have done. So let me just retry that real quick.
We can see your screen, Saqib.
Okay, that's good. All right, I'll come back to the same slide where I was. So, compared to Yunus Textiles, we have also made a lot of investments. And I think this is the collective effort that all the big organizations in Pakistan are making. And I echo Fareen's point that, all that investment, all that capital has been a big liability on us, but now it has become a good point of advantage for the Pakistani industry. But we can do so much, right? As Fareen was also saying, we have run out of rooftop solar energy.
We can't hear you. Your voice.
To use other spaces where we can put solar power energy.
Yes, please. If your voice was breaking again, Saqib, if you can discuss it instead of maybe sharing the presentation.
Yeah.
We can't hear you, Saqib. Maybe I can, maybe Saqib, I think there's some connectivity issue from your end. We are unable to hear you. Maybe try rejoining. In the meanwhile, if I can move on to the next speaker from New Climate Institute. But before moving on, if Ms. Sobia Baker, you would like to highlight anything here, please feel free to do so. Thank you.
Thank you very, very much, Zainab, and very good afternoon to all of the participants of this webinar. We're so grateful that you could be here and make time for these very important discussions that we're having. My apologies for joining late. I'm running from another meeting, and I'm sure that everything has been moving smoothly. While we wait for Saqib to address the technical issues at his end, it is indeed a great pleasure to invite the team from the New Climate Institute to now present the decarbonization roadmap that they have developed. This roadmap has been made possible by the generous support of the German Federal Ministry for Development Cooperation, the BMZ. And we're very pleased to share this roadmap with you because knowing how important the textile sector is to Pakistan, it is a major export revenue earner. We also recognize that the sector faces significant challenges. It relies on very energy intensive processes, energy costs are rising. In addition to that, looking at the emerging global standards and the demands that are now being put on the textile industry from a sustainability perspective, and then eventually also from a carbon taxation perspective. These are challenges that all need to be addressed. All of these challenges then also in the face of strong competition from regional players like Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, pose a whole new set of challenges that the textile industry in Pakistan must adjust itself with. So, without further ado, I would like to welcome the colleagues from the New Climate Institute, Juliette Grandpré, Chetna Harish Kumar, Nabila Putri Salsabila, who will give you an overview of the decarbonization roadmap for the Pakistani textile industry. Thank you, colleagues. Over to you.
Thank you, Sylvia. I'll just start by sharing my screen. And I hope you can see it in full screen.
Yes, we can.
All right, great. Then thank you once again, and good afternoon, everyone. My name is Chetna, and I will start this presentation of the research brief we prepared on the topic of decarbonization and sustainability in Pakistan's textile sector. Here, you'll see a brief overview of what today's presentation will look like. So I will start by introducing who we are, so New Climate Institute, and set some of the context of an approach for what we did here with this research study. I'll also share key findings on the policy side of things and pass on to my colleague Salsa, who will take us through a deep dive on the industry side of things, and also close the presentation by highlighting the gaps that came out of our analysis and then recommendations or roadmap for the way forward for the textiles industry in Pakistan. Starting with our introduction, so New Climate Institute is an independent nonprofit organization dedicated to advancing climate policy and global sustainability. We were founded in 2014, and here we are based here in Germany, working on driving climate ambition and implementation through research, policy design, and knowledge sharing. We do work on a range of topics. Some of our flagship reports or flagship projects are mentioned here. So the Clean, Affordable, and Secure Energy for Southeast Asia looks at just energy transitions in the region. The Corporate Climate Responsibility Monitor tracks and evaluates corporate climate action, and the Climate Action Tracker also does the same, but at the national or country level. Apart from these, we also work a lot on climate diplomacy, which involves advising the German government on its climate and development partnerships with over 15 countries that are shown here on this map. Our role here is to provide research and analytical support to help drive climate ambition and implementation in partner countries. And in the case of Pakistan, we do focus on the textile sector decarbonization, given its size and significance. So this is a little bit of background on how we became involved in this decarbonization study. That brings us to context and approach. So a few words on the why and the how of what we did. So on the why, we started by identifying two major forces that the Pakistan textile industry is experiencing, which can be called decarbonization drivers. So on the one hand, as has been mentioned already, the industry is quite affected by all the changes in climate and trade policies that are happening in the European Union. And this is because, of course, it's a major export sector. It contributes 2/3 of the total export earnings of the country. And on top of that, the EU is a very important or large trading partner, the second largest. And 9 out of 10 or the top 10 export products going from Pakistan to the EU are from this sector. That gives you an idea of how important this relationship is. And that does make it, the Pakistan textile sector, exposed to the new sustainability standards and reporting requirements that are coming out of the EU, including through the eco-design principles and the corporate sustainability directives and so on. On the other side, the industry is also highly energy and emissions intensive. So we find that it accounts for about 27% of the total industrial electricity consumption, most of which comes from fossil fuels, but also 41% of industrial gas consumption alone, which are significant numbers. and overall contributes 4% of the country's annual greenhouse gas emissions, which is also significant. So that makes for a carbon profile that leaves the industry quite vulnerable to these changes in sustainability standards. But in addition, it also makes for very volatile energy costs due to the dependence on fossil fuels, which are largely imported. So that can offset the competitive advantages of the industry as well. So when you put those things together, it becomes clear that it's necessary to invest in textile sector decarbonization and sustainability measures to maintain export competitiveness and access to key export markets like the EU. So with that in mind, we go into the how of what we did. So we looked at the textile value chain that you see here, the 4 tiers, which are all present in Pakistan, to identify where decarbonization levers exist in each tier. So when you look at raw material extraction, here we're talking mainly about cotton farming, which is very water intensive and is also associated with high levels of methane emissions, which is a potent greenhouse gas. But it can also be referring to crude oil extraction, which is needed to make synthetic fibers, such as polyester, which has a high greenhouse gas footprint as well. So on that side of things, our decarbonization levers are organic farming, so using less chemicals and water, moving to sustainable natural fibers, innovating in sustainable materials, such as made out of biomaterials or captured carbon, and circular business models, because it is impossible to extract raw materials endlessly without moving to circularity instead of linearity. On the raw material processing side, so this involves converting raw materials into yarn. And here, much of the emissions come from the electricity use, which is coming from fossil fuel sources. So there, the decarbonization levers are shifting to renewable electricity and taking up energy efficient technologies or machinery in industrial plants. So that includes your boilers and motors and compressors. On material production, we look at even more industrial processes in the sector, like knitting, weaving, but also dyeing, printing, and heat setting, where your new energy needs become apparent. So you have a lot of thermal energy being used, also from fossil fuels like coal or RLNG, which are required for these processes. So here, our decarbonization levers include renewable heat coming from solar thermal or geothermal sources, and also electrifying heat, which is a way to make the process more efficient as well. Other factors like using less water and recycling water also become important here, and pollution control as well, which is relevant for the dyeing procedure. Finally, the finished product assembly side of things also involves a lot of electricity use, because here we convert the material or the fabric produced in step 3 to assembled garments. And there the decarbonization levers are the same, so using renewable electricity and energy efficient technologies. So from there, we go to our analytical approach, which had 3 steps. So the first step was benchmarking, where based on all this information that we gathered on decarbonization levers from literature, but also looking at what EU policies actually want, we developed a set of good practices, each for the policy side, so what governments can do, and also for the industry side, so how companies can respond. From there, we had to start collecting data. So we selected a sample of 3 countries. So Pakistan is one, but also to be able to compare it to regional competitors, we included Sri Lanka and Bangladesh. And from each of the 3 countries, we selected 9 of the top exporting companies. So we had a sample of 27 companies to assess. For all of those countries and companies, we collected information on how they actually perform against these good practice benchmarks that we developed in step 1. And for this, we used publicly available information from policy documents, so that's textiles and apparel policies of the 3 countries, but also company reports on sustainability that were available. So just a disclaimer there, we only look at what the companies and countries communicate in terms of their intentions, but we do not assess how effective they were in their implementation of things. So finally, the last step is comparative rating. Here we assigned a traffic light rating, so red, yellow, green, to each company or country performance based on how well they perform on each good practice measure against the benchmark. So this way we can also see visually how they compare. And that will become clear when we go into the key findings. So I will start with the policy overview. So here on this slide, you can see on the left-hand side, the set of 11 good practice policy measures that we developed for as benchmarks. So you'll see that there's 3 categories. Under materials and circularity, you have things like promoting sustainable farming, specifically cotton farming, encouraging shift away from synthetic fibers towards more sustainable fibers, but also supporting innovation and R&D for next generation sustainable materials and promoting circular production practices. On industrial processes, there's a lot on energy. So promoting renewable electricity use, facilitating transition from fossil fuels to renewables for heat, and promoting energy efficient technology uptake. We also have efficient water consumption and water recycling, as well as pollution control measures. And finally, the category on compliance looks at how prepared or what policy measures are being implemented to ensure the country and the industry is prepared to comply with regulatory changes coming from export markets. So on the right-hand side, you see how the 3 countries scored on all of these good practices. And green here means their policy, or the textile sector policy, covered that particular measure very well. Yellow means only partially or indirectly, and red means they omitted mentioning that. Gray just means we did not find information on that topic at all. So already here visually, it's possible to see that Pakistan does perform better than both of its neighbors in terms of policy measures for textiles decarbonization and sustainability, as you can see from the composition of greens and reds here. This is because the textiles and apparel policy is quite broad and comprehensive. It touches on a lot of these measures here, even if only partially. Bangladesh is a close second, also because it has a good textiles policy, which covers a lot of the same measures and even covers some additional things, as you can see here on innovation and circular practices. And Sri Lanka, Sri Lanka, on the other hand, is a bit behind on the policy side, but this could be because they did not have an overarching policy for the textile sector, and the policies that exist are quite piecemeal, but we'll see that they do perform well on the industry side later. So coming to the policy results, as I already said, Pakistan does perform better than both neighbors, but the indicators it scores best on are sustainable cotton farming, pollution control and wastewater treatment, and capacity building for compliance. However, Pakistan could be more explicit in promoting innovation in sustainable fibers. Right now, it's kind of ambivalent when it comes to innovation. It wants to promote innovation in technical textiles and next generation fibers, which is not clear that they will be more sustainable, and measures to reduce domestic waste generation. Right now, the policy only addresses import of textiles waste, which is important, but only partial. These are the indicators that are well covered in Bangladesh's policy. So there's something to learn from that. In terms of energy efficiency and renewable heat, these are also missed opportunities in the textiles policy, given that they have high potential to decarbonize energy use in the sector, which, in this very energy intensive sector at that. And finally, the policy does not mention sustainability related data collection and disclosure, which will be important, as we've seen, to address compliance with EU policies like the eco-design and the CSDDD. So that's also a gap. And with that, I will hand over to my colleague Salsa to take us through the deep dive on industry.
Yes, thank you, Chetna. So moving on to our industry assessment, this overview table provides a snapshot of company performance in Pakistan, Bangladesh, and Sri Lanka across 13 good practice measures or decarbonization levers in the value chain that we have previously identified. And as mentioned, we applied a traffic light system where green indicates comprehensive effort, yellow means some evidence, and red shows limited evidence. As you can see, the overall sustainability performance of Pakistani and Sri Lankan textile companies is quite similar, while Bangladeshi companies lag behind. Pakistani companies show relative strength in the industrial processes category with several green and yellow scores, while Sri Lanka fares better in materials and circularity and demonstrates leadership on sustainability initiatives beyond the core measures. Both countries are also advanced in setting emissions reduction targets and reporting. In contrast, Bangladesh shows predominantly red scores, which indicates minimal progress and a lack of publicly available information on sustainability efforts. Next slide. Now let's have a deep dive into the first findings category, which is target setting and reporting. In Pakistan, we see a mixed performance. So leading companies have committed to net zero, but many other firms fall short, often setting fake net zero targets. And the quality of reporting also varies, with some providing data without sufficient context. And for many smaller companies, there is limited or no information available. The situation in Bangladesh is not much better. There are no committed reduction targets or clear net zero timelines among our sampled companies. And this absence of comprehensive reporting for Scope 1, 2, and 3 emissions creates a transparency gap. So in this category, Sri Lanka performs slightly better. Our leading companies have set net zero targets with interim goals and also comprehensive reporting. However, just like in the other, Pakistan demonstrates moderate progress in adopting saving initiatives like waste heat recovery, and a key strength is its good water management practices, with many companies implementing wastewater treatment and science-based water targets to achieve zero liquid discharge. In contrast, Bangladesh shows limited adoption of renewable or energy-saving technologies. It lacks in process and material efficiency, and while there are isolated examples of improvements like waterless dyeing process, these practices are not yet widespread, and water management across the industry is still limited. In Sri Lanka, renewable electricity sourcing is more common among large companies, and most of them have implemented energy management systems. However, the country shows a mixed performance overall, as smaller companies lag behind their large and medium-sized counterpart, particularly in water management. Next slide. Yes, now we turn to materials and circularity, which is a critical area for the textile sector. So Pakistan shows a growing commitment to material circularity with an increasing use of certified, recycled, and organic materials. Companies are also exploring recycling their pre- and post-consumer waste and supporting sustainable farming practices. But the country still lacks information on addressing overproduction and waste in general. In Bangladesh, the adoption of sustainable materials remains very limited. While a few companies they source organic or recycled fibers, there is minimal investment in next generation low carbon materials, and efforts to reduce overproduction are still largely absent. In this category, we consider Sri Lanka as the leader because there is high usage of recycled and organic materials, and the leading companies also invest in their R&D department for researching material circularity, like developing biodegradable yarn, and also following this design for sustainability principles. Next slide. In our final findings category, we assess their broader sustainability leadership beyond the core measures. So in Pakistan, leading firms have signed international sustainability initiatives like the UN Fashion Industry Charter for Climate Action and Race to Zero, and a few even have dedicated corporate sustainability teams that report to their CEO. However, these overall efforts remain limited in scale, impact, and relevance to the whole industry challenges. In Bangladesh, there is a lack of focus on both core and additional sustainability measures. We found only limited environmental certifications or audits and also minimal participation in global sustainability initiative for fashion. And in contrast, Sri Lanka demonstrates leadership beyond core measures because their leading companies are establishing nonprofit foundations for ecosystem restoration, for example. They also host sustainability summits and they actively partner with global initiatives like the UN Global Compact, RE100 or EP100. Next slide. Based on our analysis, we have identified several critical gaps in textile decarbonization for Pakistan. First, there is a lack of clear commitment to sustainable materials. While Pakistan aims to diversify beyond cotton, it disproportionately promotes synthetic fibers derived from petrochemicals. And this contradicts decarbonization goals and increases exposure to EU policy risks, like potential CBAM expansion to textile. Although innovation is encouraged, sustainability is also not a stated R&D priority, and it missed a key opportunity to meet growing global demand. Secondly, there is a policy blind spot on renewable heat. So industrial heat is the sector's largest source of emission, and they are mainly supplied by natural gas. However, there is no mention of transitioning to renewable heat in its national policy documents or company sustainability reports. We indeed found some firms have adopted biomass boilers, but this raises sustainability concerns around deforestation, food competition, and also resource availability. And third, energy efficient technologies are not adequately supported. Upgrading machinery to be more efficient is a clear decarbonization pathway, as I've mentioned before, but it lacks policy prioritization. And while large exporters are already making investment, smaller firms often lack the capacity to absorb these high upfront costs. And without targeted support from the government, widespread adoption remains unlikely. And continuing with the identified gaps, the fourth one is reporting and communication. So Pakistan lags behind Sri Lanka in sustainability reporting, as most major exporters do not publish dedicated sustainability reports, and there is no overarching policy on sustainability disclosure. And unlike Sri Lanka's Garments Without Guilt campaign, Pakistan lacks an industry-wide sustainability narrative. In addition, we also observe some corporate carbon neutrality claims that ignore Scope 3 emission, which risk greenwashing. And the fifth gap is that there is an over-reliance on offsetting and RECs. Several firms depend on nature-based solutions like blue carbon or also reforestation credits and also renewable energy certificates to claim carbon neutrality. But these are poor substitute for real emissions reduction, as biogenic carbon is not permanent and RECs do little to drive additional new renewable capacity. And we see that long-term power purchase agreements would be a more credible alternative in this case. And lastly, circularity is still poorly addressed. Most companies have no targets to reduce overproduction and waste. While recycled fibers are promoted, there is no clear definition of what qualifies as recycled. And in particular, the promotion of using PET recycled fibers may actually increase demand for virgin plastics. Recycling also has its limits, including chemical processes and microplastics pollution. Next slide. So what can be done to close these gaps? To address the first one, companies should actively drive the adoption of sustainable alternative fibers, and this can be done through strategic partnerships, investment in startups, setting clear production targets for sustainable products, and also dedicating R&D resources to innovation. Regarding renewable heat, companies must accelerate the shift to clean thermal energy by adopting renewable geothermal or solar thermal where feasible, while also pushing for electrification of heat processes and investing in waste heat recovery to improve overall process efficiency. To tackle the inadequate support for energy efficient technologies, companies should not wait for policy. Companies could advocate for change and negotiate with technology providers for affordable financing schemes or leasing models to make energy efficient solutions accessible for all, including smaller enterprises. Next slide. To improve reporting, companies must enhance data quality, adopt international reporting standards, and also have their reports audited by third party, while being careful to avoid any climate claims without evidence, as it could be considered greenwashing. And to counter the reliance on offset, the priority must be, of course, real emissions reduction through technology and process improvements. And these efforts should be supported by credible transition plans that limit reliance on carbon offset and RECs. And finally, to advance circularity and reduce overproduction, companies must design durable, repairable, and recyclable products. They also need to transparently disclose their progress on improving material efficiency and also reducing waste, and move beyond just sourcing organic and recycled materials to having truly circular design. Next slide. Yes, this brings us to the end of our presentation. And to wrap up, while the industry shows promise, key gaps still remain. But with bold action, this can become opportunities and position Pakistan as a global leader in sustainable textile. Thank you for your attention, and we will be happy to take any questions you may have.
Thank you very much to New Climate Institute for that very valuable presentation that we have. And I see that you're getting a lot of appreciation for your input. Thank you so much. The decarbonization roadmap showed that Pakistan is doing very well, especially when you compare it to its regional competition. There are a number of areas it's doing well in, but there's still some opportunities to grow and to improve. You have Salsa in your presentation pointed out some of the things where improvements can be made with regards to insufficient reporting, compliance, sustainability related reporting and communications, an inadequate focus on circularity, and then an over reliance on RECs and nature based solutions. We are very fortunate in that we have the Ministry of Commerce with us, who will later also provide an input from a policy alignment perspective. But I'd just like to check if there are any questions for the NCI team. And I see that we have a few. The first question is to Chetna. If you could please provide detailed information on the textile value chain, the decarbonization levers on slide 9.
Yes, so thank you for the question. I think maybe it's helpful if I share this again. Just hold on. So when we talk about the textiles value chain decarbonization levers, literature classifies it into the value chain into 4 tiers, right? And here we are only looking at the value chain that is within a country's border. So we are not talking about transport and distribution that become important also during export, but this is what can be controlled within the borders. And as I said, Pakistan does all of this within its borders. So there is a lot of cotton farming. And here, the decarbonization, which is on the raw material extraction side, the decarbonization levers I presented were in terms of making cotton farming more sustainable. That's why organic farming is listed here, but also shifting towards more sustainable fibers, right? So that's something more long-term and something that requires a lot of innovation and R&D investment, and links also to what Salsa was saying about company involvement and how companies can invest there. Circularity is an important one as well, because raw material extraction is unsustainable with current levels and current consumption trends with fast fashion. So this is also in response to some of the EU sustainability regulations, like eco-design requires products to be durable, repairable, and recyclable. So And I think that also answers another one of the questions in the chat as to what circular production practices mean. So that's what it essentially means. So reducing waste, upcycling, and also recycling better with high standards of what qualifies as recycled fibers. And there it essentially is talking about not using recycled PET bottles from the packaging industry to make recycled garments, because on a systems level, it does not solve the problem. And then raw material processing is pretty straightforward. That's transitioning to renewable electricity and improving efficiency. Material production involves heat, so we have to figure out ways to decarbonize that. And that's moving to renewable sources like solar thermal and geothermal. Biomass does have its own sustainability concerns in terms of deforestation and competition with food security. And we have responsible water consumption also here. And again, finished product assembly is also electricity. So I hope that clarifies a bit more.
Thank you very much, Etna. Yes, it does. I mean, circularity will also lead to decarbonization. So these are critical elements that you have considered in such detail in your roadmap. Aska Nawal would like to know if you could please elaborate on or what the circular production practices mean.
Yes, I think this is the one that I already covered here.
Oh,
so
okay.
in terms of, yeah.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you very much. And then we have more of a broader question, which I think is perhaps outside of the purview of the roadmap itself. But Noreen Akhtar would like to know, why is Bangladesh still able to export more than Pakistan despite such limited adoption of sustainability practices?
I think that's a good question. And that's something that
But maybe one
that
that think tank based in Germany may not be able to answer right now, but we'll get back to that. So thank you very much to the audience for their very thought-provoking questions. Please do keep them coming. Of course, feel free to reach out to us even after the session. Um, we're now going to pivot from the decarbonization roadmap, which has done a fantastic job of setting the stage, showing where the low hanging fruits are, and what Pakistan can do to enhance its competitive edge, especially vis a vis its regional competitors. I'm very delighted to have my friend and colleague join me in the webinar today, Sorajit Iyer, who brings with him considerable experience in the ESG landscape. So, really looking forward to your comments, Sorajit. We've explored how decarbonization roadmaps in the textile industry are unlocking new opportunities for transition finance. And now I would like to ask you to come in and help us chart a clear pathway for capital to flow towards meaningful climate action while at the same time managing financial risk. With that, Surajit, thank you very much again for your presentation, and over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Shobya. I hope I am audible to everybody. Great. Would colleagues from SDPI be sharing the screen share? Perfect. Thank you. So while it's coming on, let me just quickly start with a quick introduction. So thanks again to all participants. Is the screen working properly? By the way, I think the presentation got frozen.
Yes, it's working properly.
It's fine. Okay, great. Thanks. So, as Shobya said, my name is Sorajit Iyer. I'm based at GIZ's office in Cairo, Egypt, and I'm part of the Sustainable Finance Global Program here. In today's webinar, we heard some excellent comments on the sciences and those type of aspects, the technical aspects of the sector. Let me talk a bit about the finance aspect, because ultimately any business sector, any business activity requires money. Money makes the world go round. So let's see a bit about the financing of low carbon transition for a business sector and essentially transition finance. Next slide, please. So we'll basically look at an overview of transition finance, how it fits into the the overall concepts of sustainable finance, the processes and designs involved. Just to add a caveat, I myself come from a finance and business strategy background, so the language that I use in the presentation would be a bit tilting towards that. But for those participants who are coming from textile companies who would need to approach financial institutions tomorrow to raise capital for these endeavors, you will also need to speak that same language, because when we say that private sector commercial capital has to play a bigger role to achieve the SDGs, you need to speak the language of what they are looking out for. So we'll go on the PPT with that tone. One point I want to quickly emphasize in this slide. If you see the graph of emissions that is there, the current level of NDC that you see on the right side of the screen, you'll see that it is actually reasonably higher than what the current emission levels are. Now, there could be, technically a lot of reasons for that, big or small, but one inference or meaning that comes out of it is that the emissions have yet not peaked in the country. So it's expected to increase much faster in the coming few years till it reaches that peak and then starts tapering down towards that NDC, right? That should be the ideal pathway or the journey, the trajectory, which also then means that a greater degree of speed would be required for effecting the transition within that short time. So it's good to keep that in context when we're talking about transition in emerging markets around the world. Next slide, please. So a bit on what is transition finance. So, transition finance is essentially what I would, in very simple terms, say that it's where you look at companies that have carbon intensive processes, which means that they emit high emissions, carbon emissions, and you need to replace those processes with low carbon alternatives. Which means what? Which means, in a very simple term, that you look at the building blocks or the components of your business, how the material flows through those components. Those components could be the business model, the raw materials that you use, the industrial processes involved, the chemical reactions involved, the value chain framework that is there, the participants that are there, what sort of distribution networks do you have, what sort of consumer behaviors are there. And you look at all these components to see how the material flows in terms of what is the effective emissions coming out of it, which is what your scope 1, 2, 3 that you talk about, that you hear about is all about. And identifying which of these components is really creating the most material emission risk, because to put it very honestly, you cannot do everything. You can only do the most critical things and those things that are possible to do. So that is where the materiality assessment comes into play. Based on this identification and assessment, you basically devise a business strategy, forward business strategy that you would have to put in place in your company to basically use those low carbon alternate solutions that are available, that are accessible in the market in the coming time, and replace those material risk components with that. So the capital expenditure, the operating expenditure to fund this entire replacement exercise to low carbon alternatives in those material components is what is transition finance. And what it effectively means is that transition planning, low carbon transition planning, is not something above or separate from a business. Transition plan is essentially business plan, and transition finance effectively becomes business finance. So in hard to abate sectors, particularly, the processes that we may need to use to identify which components are most material and which of those are replaceable is actually quite tough, because there are many nitty-gritty processes involved, many dependencies involved, several complex components. Some of them are very essential. The entire production cannot happen without that. So, but there are still, despite all of these challenges, there are still several components where transition can be done, and it can be done today. And starting on that journey is more important than waiting for everything to fall in place. And it is this identification or assessment of which components you can work with that creates the opportunity to move ahead in certain those specific areas and in specific phases. Without trying to overhaul the entire business at one go. Because if you try to overhaul the entire business model at one go, that would see a lot of resistance from your, from your board members when you go for board approvals, from your investors, bankers, so on and so forth. So this type of phased sequential approach may sound piecemeal to a lot of the climate purists, if I put it that way. But from a pragmatism of business and finance standpoint, especially in emerging markets where regulatory tailwind is still evolving, it's still in process, this sort of phased and sequential approach has been seen to justify to external stakeholders the near-term profit hit that may happen, especially institutional investors, sell-side analysts, media, and so on. You do also remember that the investment horizon of foreign commercial investors is much narrower when they look at emerging markets as compared to when they look at the Western market. So these issues are a much bigger deal in emerging markets. Now, at the same time, changing our regulations, business practices is necessary, like our colleague said in the previous session, that global regulatory movement is happening. And if we need to keep relevant, we need to move in pace, which is absolutely correct. So in the point here is that I won't call it a challenge, but the delay that sometimes happen in this endeavor is that a lot of priority of policy and business goes towards achieving, the 100% access, say energy access, or, access to other essential products and services across the economy, because the access itself has not reached 100%. And that becomes the priority for development and for business as a whole. Now, to make climate transition a priority in this type of a mindset, in this type of, all the compulsions that emerging economies work with, it is important to highlight the rationale, not so much in terms of the emissions, but in terms of the dependency of the economy on those sectors. So what will be the impact on jobs, livelihood, business revenue, ROE, if this transition were not to happen, and the impact of global regulations would really hit full face. So sometimes the storyline or the narrative also matters. Next slide, please. So and just to clarify what I said in the previous slide at the end, that the narrative matters. The narrative I'm saying, keep in mind that I'm saying from the context of the commercial finance institutions, especially private sector commercial finance institutions, or commercial finance as a whole, which is where majority of financial assets in most emerging markets lie, domestic commercial financial institutions. And they are one step behind business in terms of moving towards sustainability. So again, it goes back to that point I said, that you have to speak their language to make them move, because you need the funds from them. Anyway, so where does transition finance lie within sustainable finance? As you see on the screen, a lot of green boxes. In a nutshell, sustainable finance has two components. One is you channelize finance towards projects that are defined as green or sustainable. And second is where you are integrating the consideration of sustainability and climate risks into your financial institutions' risk management and credit appraisal processes. So it is both ways. It is both a financing concept, it's both a risk concept. Now, within financing of green, a subset is the financing of climate mitigation. Mitigation is essentially the cause of global warming and climate change, which is to reduce the need to reduce carbon emissions. So any financing of projects that contribute towards that is mitigation. Transition finance falls part of that. But if you see on the graph, there is a second arrow from that box, and that is simply because point number one, the definitions of all these new concepts are still evolving. There is no definition is set in stone. So that is one disclaimer. The other reason why I am adding that is because we have seen that a lot of targets are not necessarily only focused on emissions. It can be emissions plus something, and that something is often other environment targets, around resource use efficiency, so on and so forth, which may not fall under the technical definition of carbon emission mitigation. So because sometimes a lot of the standards and the principles in green finance are aligned to certain criteria, and one has to be cognizant of that as well. Next slide, please. So we looked at let's move to the next slide, or has it changed? It's still the same one at my end. Can we move to the next slide, please? Yeah, perfect. Thank you. So we looked at transition finance in the context of sustainable finance. Now let's look at transition finance in the context of financial instruments. So you have two things in finance. One is financial instruments. The other is okay. Is the slide visible to everybody?
So maybe
Okay, let's.
we need to move to next slide, please.
Yeah, it's okay. Let's hold on this slide. No. I didn't stick on that. Yeah. Let's keep on this. So under instruments and structures, we have things like labeled instruments, which is essentially labels like green bonds that most of you may have heard of. Performance linked instruments is essentially where you have a outcome that is linked to the achievement of certain predefined outcomes. So essentially that becomes an interest rate discount or a coupon rate, a step down in terms of achieving certain performance targets like emission reduction targets, for instance. And you have blended finance, which is probably the most misunderstood concept within sustainable finance in my experience. Blended finance cannot be used everywhere. It is only to be used in those specific cases where conventional financial system of public and private capital cannot fund. So it's a completely different thing. It's a structuring solution. The earlier ones were instrument solutions. Now, transition finance as a concept comes under all of them. So it really depends on what is being funded, how it is being funded, what is the approach being used. So it can come under everywhere. Projects that meet eligibility criteria can be funded by labeled bonds. Projects that are better linked to a performance target can use performance linked instruments like SLBs, SLLs, and so on. So it depends on the case. Next slide, please. So most of you have heard of the transition decarbonization processes in previous sessions. So I will not go into the technical aspects much, but there are a few points from a business standpoint that I wanted to emphasize. Now, the transition plan essentially forms the underlying core of a transition finance solution, and hence it is very important. So, like I said earlier, transition plan is really business planning. It's business planning and strategy. So emissions estimation, estimating the material emissions goes back to what we spoke about, breaking the business components, the material flow in them, and then mapping this. We need to map this baseline to certain sectoral decarbonization emission curves, SDAs it's called. It is essentially a curve showing how the emissions in a sector should decline over time in order to meet the Paris goals. So it provides a useful reference that makes it much more credible because these become science-based, aligned to science-based targets. And credibility, this credibility factor is probably the single most important factor that helps gain or attract investor interest to such financing solution, transition finance or sustainable finance solutions. Because you have a growing pool of green dedicated investors, institution investors that are willing to accept a lower coupon for credible green investments, which for a company, it means a lower cost of funding, and that can be a significant financial gain. So there is a very pecuniary interests for companies to look at these things. So for credibility's sake, the SDA curve selected should ideally be SBTi 1.5 degree aligned. It should be relevant to that material component. It's not necessarily always to look at SDA of that overall sector. The material. So let's say if my purchase electricity is very high, I look at that SDA in order to reduce that emission risk. So it depends on the relevance of the emission curve that you are selecting. Reduction targets are ideally based on absolute emissions. Financing solution that you create thereof should also be aligned with all these practices. There can be cases where an established SDA is probably not available often. I'm not too sure about the textile sector particularly, but we can check that up. But in such cases, it's not, it's best to go as per a standard rule of thumb of the Science Based Target Initiative, which is basically a 4.2 plus annual reduction target in scope 1 and 2 emissions by 2030, depending on when your baseline was. So it is generally been found that this sort of offers a very useful ready reference, if I may call it that. So this making all of this very credible, why I keep emphasizing on this is that it goes a long way in getting also reputation benefits from all these external stakeholders, investors, analysts, media, clients. Do remember that all these stakeholders in emerging markets are also evolving in their understanding and acceptance of the sustainability topics and how they view it, the impact on how they view the impact on business or financials because of these. So that communication is very important. The communication is one part of it is sustainability reporting, but then the other part of communication is the corporate communication or the investor relations, that how do you take this information and put it in context of the business performance and narrate that story to those audiences. Because I spent most of my career in investor relations and business strategy in the past, and I can tell you for a fact that hardly most fund managers and sell-side analysts are not going to invest that much of research time. So they go as per the broader trends that they hear especially in these new concepts. And sometimes something that they may write in an analyst report may create a lot of issue down the line in terms of evincing investor interest. So your communication to these stakeholders is as critical as is communicating the basic information through sustainability reporting. So corporate communication and sustainability communication goes hand in hand in order to convey the credibility of the overall transition plan and business plan that you are doing and the finance that you are raising towards these. So these are all interconnected dots. Let's move to the next slide, please. So once you have a credible transition plan in place, you are looking to fund it. So you can use internal capital. Internal capital infusion is always desirable to some extent. But if you are looking for external capital, then transition finance may offer some financial benefits that I mentioned in the previous slide. Just to recap that, there is an opportunity for lower cost of funding from green dedicated investors that are willing to accept a lower coupon for projects that meet the strict eligibility criteria. There is a possibility to earn lower, pay out lower interest rates if certain predefined performance targets regarding reducing emissions and similar metrics are achieved during the tenure. There can also be a lot of sustainable finance instruments are being, included with a lot of credit enhancement tools related to guarantees or other interest subsidies that are basically structured in that transition instrument for risk pooling. Now, what would you as a company need to do to be able to raise this finance? So I go back to that point on credibility. So alignment of the project and the finance instrument itself with established criteria given in green finance taxonomies, standards and principles to do with green debt instruments. There are a lot of these that are established and followed in the market, and these often help assess whether the project that you're looking at is eligible or not, whether the process through which you are creating a financing solution is that aligning with what the principles suggest. All this creates credibility. It is, again, it's also important to know that we're not just talking about the company as a whole, but the nature of the component that is material. And so the alignment, when we say alignment with various standards and taxonomies, the nature of activity of that component also needs to be looked at. Now, the capital utilization of all these eligible pipeline of project that you want to do, it must be of a reasonable scale to evince, financial sense to go to the market with, to go to the financial market with. This is something labeled instruments particularly would need to look at. If you ask me, my personal opinion, given the stage of, process or events happening in emerging markets in general in this space, I feel more convinced on the performance-linked instrument route, because the eligible project pipeline in many markets has not yet achieved that scale, probably maybe 2 or 3 years down the line. But in many emerging markets, performance-linked instruments like sustainability-linked loans and bonds have really picked up in a big way in recent years. And that is the reason I feel more convinced, although it's my personal bias, but I still feel convinced to say that in such markets, performance-linked instruments is probably the better thing to look at right now. Things may change, but I'm saying right now. You set an emission reduction target. It's a clear target. That target is based on certain logic, and you try to do your business strategy to achieve that. So the impact is very clear. Things move forward, and the financiers also get a lot of clarity when they see these clear outcomes and markers when they are discussing or negotiating a financing solution with you. The question again is, how do you make it credible? So the target that you are setting has to be credible. It has to be it has to make sense. So again, you go back to referring to a SBTI aligned, science-based aligned SDA curve. You typically take the average of the emissions level that are shown in that curve as per the start and end year of your bond. So let's say you're looking at a bond issuance today, 10-year bond issuance. So what is the level of emissions in that curve as of 2025 and 2035? And you take the average of it on the assumption that whatever your actual path trajectory is, you will eventually have an average that is similar to the average in the curve. Your own trajectory may actually not reflect that the curve of that SDA, but the average will eventually move towards that. That is the assumption on which the entire instrument is created. So that's something I wanted to emphasize. Financial benefits aside, just want to also highlight that brand reputation benefits also occur, which are intangible currently, I mean, technically. So often those get discounted. But it is important to keep those in mind, especially front-running companies that are initiating a lot of sustainability action. They get a lot of brand reputation benefits in terms of the leeway with external stakeholders, in terms of evincing investor interest, bankers' interest, client interest, all these topics. Let's move to the next slide.
Sorry, before we move to the next slide, because you've mentioned so many very important policy-related measures as well, and then we heard on the decarbonization roadmap, policy-related measures that Pakistan could take. We have the honor of having the DG Textiles from the Ministry of Commerce with us. We'd just like to pull him in very quickly for his reactions.
Sure.
And then we will continue with your presentation and then also talk a little bit about Article 6.4 and what that could mean with the textile industry. But Zainab, I would like to hand over to you so you could please invite Mr. Siddiqui for his valuable comments.
Thank you very much. Mr. Mudassir Raza Siddiqui, DG Textiles from Ministry of Commerce, he's also spearheading the initiative around sustainability and circularity of textiles. Mr. Mudassir Raza, thank you so much for joining us today. Can you please highlight, firstly, your reflections on whatever has been discussed today, and secondly, what are the key policy measures that the ministry intends to take, especially in context of upcoming regulations by the European Union? Over to you, sir.
Thank you very much to all of you, especially GIZ, STPI, and the new Climate Institute for organizing this event and giving a very detailed presentation on overall global landscape and an analysis of the compliance situation in the key textile companies in Pakistan. So I'll just start with the introduction that Pakistan textile and apparel industry contributes around 57% in our national exports, 40% in the industrial employment, and 24% in a value addition. You know that the textile and apparel industry operates on a contract manufacturing model, wherein the product design and the process requirement is being floated from the buyer side. This is very important in a perspective that when we talk about the industrial decarbonization, there needs to be an effective collaboration between the buyer and the supplier, because this is not a problem of only one country in the world like Bangladesh, Pakistan, or any other manufacturers. It's a shared responsibility between the stakeholders across the board. And I believe with a shared responsibility and the ownership, we can drive towards a situation where we will be having the less emissions in the world, leading towards the less impact of the climate change. Let me also share with you that because a lot of discussion has been done on the manufacturing textile industry. You know that Pakistan textile manufacturing industry operates in a two segments. One is a large scale manufacturing, and number two is a small and medium enterprises. 80%, around 80% of our export are by the large scale manufacturers, and the 20% is being from the small and medium enterprises. So this is very important to keep into consideration while formulating the action plans and developing the roadmaps, so that because there is a greater need to improve the compliance conditions, especially in the small and medium enterprises. In the recent years, Pakistan textiles and apparel industry has demonstrated a strong commitment to the environmental and the sustainability practices. The sector is undergoing a profound transformation, and it's positioning itself for the robust export growth. Various companies in Pakistan have acquired the critical certifications related to the environment, energy, and the sustainability. Net Zero Pakistan is another initiative which reflects the commitment of Pakistan to accelerate their sustainability transition and deliver the net zero goal by 2050. In addition, the individual companies in Pakistan have made strides in alignment with the global requirement and had also adopted the advanced traceability technologies to champion the supply chain transparency. There is a clear understanding between the private sector players to move toward the circular and the sustainable manufacturing. This is evident from the developments such as converting agriculture waste into the regenerative products like banana fiber, manufacturing byproducts with industrial waste, converting pre-consumer and the post-consumer waste into the recycled materials and the products, and refurbishing the used clothing for re-export and the domestic consumption. You know that Pakistan is a largest importer of the used clothing in the world. And this used clothing is being refurbished and recycled by our local industry and being re-exported to the different countries across the world. And the part that is not refurbishable is being recycled into the fibers and blended with the different materials. And again, these are being used in the manufacturing and to the export to the European Union and other countries. You have particularly asked about what kind of a policy interventions the government of Pakistan and the Ministry of Commerce has undertaken or taking right now. Ministry of Commerce, in collaboration with the development partners, is spearheading various environmental and sustainability initiatives. You know that after ratification of the core international convention, Pakistan has been able to be a beneficiary of EU GSP Plus since 2013 and successfully concluded all the previous biennial reviews. Further to its commitment, Ministry of Commerce has established National Compliance Center in 2023, which is a concrete steps to strengthening firm level compliances. The center has initiated the training of the various sectors, including small and medium enterprises across the Pakistan. Ministry of Commerce, through the Export Development Fund, is financing the various projects for the industrial sustainability in Pakistan, which includes the establishment of effluent treatment plants, initiation of Better Work program in 2022 in collaboration with ILO and the private sector, and more recently, another program has been approved regarding the traceability of cotton value chain. Furthermore, Ministry of Commerce is also working to develop a comprehensive roadmap to effectively utilize the Export Development Fund for the sustainability and the development of export industries in Pakistan. Let me also share with you that Ministry of Commerce, in collaboration with GIZ, is spearheading a capacity building program, namely improvement of environmental and the social standard in Pakistan textile and apparel industry, wherein the training is being provided to the industries, especially small and medium enterprises, to upgrade their manufacturing facilities and to align their competence in accordance with the emerging ESG compliances. Under this particular project with the GIZ, a study is currently undergoing for the development of a plan to align the national policies with the international regulations. Let me also share with you that Pakistan has also developed a national action plan on the energy efficiency and conservation towards doubling the rate of improvement of energy efficiency to be achieved by 2030, which includes various initiatives related to the textiles and apparel sector. Pakistan is also a third largest producer of the better cotton globally and promotes the cultivation of the organic cotton with sustainable practices, which is ultimately reducing the per unit greenhouse emissions with a better cotton initiative to scale up the project, because currently the better cotton is around 40% of our total production. Subsequently, the government of Pakistan is also in the process of formulation of national action plan on the cotton, because there was a discussion on that there's a lot of water consumption in the cotton farming. So the emphasis is on to focus on the adoption of good agriculture practices and scaling up the production of the regenerative, sustainable, and organic cotton in Pakistan in order to reduce the carbon footprint and improve the resource efficiency. There is also a lot of discussion on transition from the fossil fuels to renewable energy. In the past, the State Bank of Pakistan provided sufficient financing support to the textile and apparel sector. And this financing facility started back in 2015 and it ended up in 2024. And the objective was to promote the renewable energy projects in the country. Further, under the various schemes, the central bank provided the financing support to the industry for modernization through the technological upgradation, with an objective to improve the resource efficiency in the textile and apparel sector. As we are talking about the small and medium enterprises, let me again share with you that Ministry of Science and Technology in Pakistan is organizing training programs on establishing the certification system and extending the financial support for the compliance to the environmental and the social accountability through the third-party certifications under the certification incentive program for the small and medium enterprises. Ministry of Climate Change has also announced the guidelines for the trading in carbon markets, which will certainly be incentivizing the industry to reduce the carbon footprints. One of the speaker has discussed about that they are establishing the wind power plants and other renewable projects, but they are unable to transition to shift that particular of energy to their facilities due to the policy constraint. So let me share with you that Pakistan is currently working to formulate a policy to liberalize the power sector by allowing the wheeling. This will certainly help the export sector to increase the share of the renewable energy in the energy mix and promote the efficiency. And regarding that as there is a specific requirement going on to use the sustainable materials, recycled materials, and biodegradable materials in the manufacturing. So Pakistan has already liberalized its import policies, wherein the industry can import any material duty-free for the re-export purpose. And further, the most recently, the government of Pakistan has approved the national tariff policy for the next 5 years, wherein the specific emphasis is going on to reduce the overall tariffs, import tariff in the country. This will again support the industries to import the machineries and the materials in a context of sustainability and compliances. Under the EU Green Deal and the EU strategy on sustainability and circularity, there is specific requirement to avoid the use of harmful substances. Let me share with you that under the import policy order of Ministry of Commerce, we have already put the restriction on the entry of the harmful substances in the country, or if any particular chemical is allowed to the extent of some threshold, then it needs approval of the certain regulatory authorities in Pakistan before to import these products in Pakistan. There was also a discussion to adopt the principles of sustainability in the financial instrument. The State Bank of Pakistan is working on development of the green taxonomy to promote the environmental friendly initiatives and the financing. And the most important, Ministry of Commerce is in a process of formulation of the textiles and apparel policy for the next 5 years, which includes the various interventions related to the sustainability and the circular manufacturing in the textile and apparel sector of the Pakistan. Ministry of Commerce has also established an advisory council on the sustainability and the circularity, aiming towards formulation of the national framework on the sustainability and the circular manufacturing in Pakistan. So these are the few policy interventions that are currently under process at Ministry of Commerce and the various ministries. So I would, through this platform, I would also like to highlight the potential areas of the collaboration between the different stakeholders and the development partners. You know that large-scale manufacturers have a financial as well as the technical capacities to align their manufacturing facilities with the emerging technologies and the sustainable practices to reduce the carbon footprints, improve energy efficiency, and to make their supply chain sustainable, circular, and traceable. However, the small and medium enterprises need support in adoption of the green and the digital technologies due to the financing constraints, coupled with limited technical expertise and the lack of awareness on the emerging regulations. In order to uplift the SMEs that are the 20%, that have the 20% contribution in our exports, the few of the important areas for the collaborations are the capacity building in terms of resource efficiency, technology upgradation, industrial decarbonization, and ESG conformity. Number 2, there is a need to facilitate the SMEs in developing bankable projects. You know, as I have mentioned, that Ministry of Commerce has the Export Development Fund, but the small and medium enterprises lacks the capacity to develop the projects and to come up with the Ministry of Commerce to support them in adoption of the sustainability practices and through the funding. So there is a need to support them to develop the bankable projects and bridging their financial need for transition towards renewable energy, replacement of energy intensive equipments, reusing wastewater, and optimization of the manufacturing processes to reduce the consumption of the water, energy, and chemicals, and developing a unified digital solution for traceability of their supply chain in accordance with the global regulations. So I look forward for interactive engagement, and I believe that I have mentioned a number of policies that are being administered by the different ministries in Pakistan, and the roadmap that has been developed by the New Climate Institute. It can help to integrate these information in their roadmaps. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Raza, for very insightful talk and for sharing and highlighting the key initiatives that the ministry is taking with different development partners, including GIZ, and also for highlighting that the ministry is open for collaborations and there are many avenues in which we can collaborate and work together. Thank you for your time, and we'll be sharing the recommendations with you soon. Thank you. Over to you, Ms. Sobel.
Also from my side, Mr. Siddiqui, a very warm thank you. Thank you very much, Zainab. And Mr. Siddiqui was talking about bankable projects. And while we were talking about transition finance, what is very clear is that the industry is at a critical juncture a juncture where environmental necessity necessitates financial opportunity as well. So, in order to undergo the type of rapid transformation to meet sustainability and climate targets, this transition is going to need a lot of capital investment. So, Sorajit in his presentation was laying out a roadmap for how to access this capital that is needed by the industry. Transition finance emerges as the bridge between the different sustainability imperatives as well as the financial realities. And now we're going to go back to Sorajit and look at what are the structured pathways to fund the industry's decarbonization journey. We're also very fortunate to have Juliette with us, and from Juliette, we're going to touch very briefly on Article 6.4 and what the opportunities will be for the textile industry. But first, let us pick up where we left off with Sorajit and the slide titled Designing a Transition Finance Instrument Based on a Transition Plan. Sorajit, thank you. Back to you.
Thank you, Shobhya. We could move to the slide after this. We finish this, but just to continue on the point that you said on the pipeline that was being spoken about. So the emphasis that I was making on performance-linked financial instruments vis-a-vis labeled financial instruments within sustainable finance for companies is also with that perspective. So that's one suggestion right there, that the pipeline for performance-based instruments is actually, those pipeline of projects are easier to do. Bankability of those projects can be more clearly shown, rather than wait and watch till a reasonable size of eligible projects take shape in a particular market. On this slide, I mean, let's move to the next one. We finished this one. We spoke about the financial benefits and all those. Yeah. So when we try to connect all of this to the textile sector, while I am not, I mean, in all honesty, I am not a textile person myself, but when I'm looking at it from a finance standpoint, that what it would take to evince the interest of financial institutions in relatively new areas or technologies, if I put it that way, and transition is a pretty new technology that a lot of financial institutions are coping with. We again obviously go back to where does it make more sense to affect the change. So there are different components. Previous speakers from New Climate Institute explained this very nicely, so I'm not going to go into all of that. But fair to say that there are different components, and the potential to decrease emissions varies between them. So the idea is to pinpoint and identify what areas make sense, which of those can be replaced with low carbon alternate options that are accessible in that market during the plan's timeline, and work with that. It's basically to give you an idea that how do you prioritize. So ultimately, you will also, as a company, going on a strategic change, which effectively transition planning is like, it's a business planning and strategic activity. You need to prioritize what activities will be most impactful, what activities are possible to do, where does the and very important, in fact, that where does the complexity of change management within the business organization, where is that most complex or less troublesome? And that is how then you will have to take the decision on what you want to change. This point on change management, in my mind, from a business sector standpoint, is, it brings to me another important observation that I've seen with experience here, is that business sustainability and sustainable finance, all these things, to do it in the context of commercial business and finance, is more about people management than about project management or process management. It's all about managing people, communicating with them, setting expectations right, doing what is possible, the resources you have in hand. So it's all about people. And sometimes I think in all the conversation about the processes and the projects, the people aspect gets a bit lost. Moving to the next slide. So I think, the challenges slide, I'll end with that. Is it showing on everybody's screen? I'm still on the previous one.
Yes, it's visible.
Okay. So I'll end the presentation with some of these challenges, very, very similar to challenges any business organization will face in any business strategy change exercise. Some of these have already been alluded to during the previous sessions. Most of them are actually pretty well known. So I will not go into them individually. But one point I want to add is that if you throw your minds back to 10, 15 years ago, then the entire mega trend of digital business and digital finance had come up at that time. And a lot of companies used to wonder whether they should do something in this. Do they need to balance the click and brick mortar model? Do they need to go completely online? What is it they could do within, even in a piecemeal approach? And all those, I mean, I was myself involved in one of those things in my previous avatar. And a lot of discussion would be that there are all these challenges. How do we counter these challenges? But with time, we have seen that, yes, it started with, one company started, two companies, three, four, five, one at a time, step by step. It all scaled up. The challenges became overcome as economies of scale, took shape. Economies of scale solve half of the business strategy problems that you will encounter always. And eventually today, digital business or digital finance is taken to be as a normal thing for all businesses. It's not any more additional thing that they are looking at. So similarly, climate action transition is the current mega trend. There are challenges that a lot of front-running companies that are facing now, a lot of the other companies that are yet to embark on this will continue to face, but it is all part of the process, and with time, a lot of these challenges will smoothen out. So the important thing is that the start is more important than waiting for a situation where all the challenges are addressed, then we'll start off. That situation never happens in reality. So slow incremental starts are very important, and I think that's what we're seeing in many markets across the world. I think this is the last slide. I'll end with this. My contact details are there in the next slide. Feel free to get in touch, or if you have any questions, happy to address them. Thank you.
Extremely kind, Surajit. Thank you so much, and thank you for sharing all this this very important input of yours. I was wondering, colleague Surajit, if you could also please just stay online with us. But to the STPI colleagues, can we please go back to the slide on plugging emissions reduction into textile protection processes? And we have Juliette with us. And for the colleagues who were with us last week, we had organized a training session on Article 6.4, the internationally transferred mitigation outcomes. And Juliet, my question to you would be, how can textile companies leverage 6.4 mechanisms from their decarbonization investments? And what makes these carbon credit revenues bankable then? If you could please come in. Thank you.
Thank you, Sabia, and very happy to be here with you. I found this workshop very useful and now very interesting. On Article 6.4, on your question, I think so. That's kind of the things we said last week in the Article 6 training, that a lot of things on Article 6.4 are still unknown, since there are no methodologies being approved until now. But we, of course, expect a lot of methodologies to be approved, might be by the end of this year, but probably a lot next year. And I think there might be some opportunities for you in the textile sector to look at the methodology and to look at how you could finance mitigation options through this mechanism. I think this mechanism will be more ambitious than what we have seen under the Clean Development Mechanism or what we currently see under the voluntary carbon markets. And that's why I think you can use potentially this mechanism to fund high-hanging fruits, meaning costly mitigation options that might not be possible in the Pakistani NDC because it's just too expensive, and to look at what these options are and how you could finance these mitigation options through Article 6.4 and find basically some ambitious buyers willing to pay the price. I think that's going to be very interesting developments coming in the Article 6 markets, and you could definitely benefit from it if you are aware of the developments. So that's what I would say in a few sentences. I think there's a lot of more things to say on Article 6, but I think it is still a bit abstract because we don't have any methodologies, but I think you can already get prepared.
Thank you very much. And that indeed is very good advice that we can start preparing for 6.4 when eventually more details are available. So, ladies and gentlemen, we saw how to make a transition finance plan. You have a heads up on Article 6.4 and ITMOS. I would like to thank all of the panelists for their extremely valuable inputs. And I just also like to mention that the two textile mills that we had with us, Farheen, if you're with us right now and if we could just see you. So Farheen and of Yunus Textile Mills and Artistic Textile Mills are one of the first companies in Pakistan who signed up to the Net Zero Science Based Targets Initiative. And they are really the front runners, but other textile companies will be catching up thanks to the work that German Development Cooperation is doing with them. With that, I would like to call upon my dear friend and colleague, Dr. Abid Suleri, to please come in and share your closing remarks with us. This has been a fabulous webinar. I think it's been very useful, seeing a lot of very robust conversations, but as they say, all good things must come to an end, and so must this webinar. But we'll keep the conversation going. For now, I would like to turn over to Abid. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Sobia and GIZ, you especially, and GIZ, especially the Pak-German Climate and Energy Partnership, which of course is moving through your dynamic energy, and you are making it relevant with the policy issues in Pakistan. And the New Climate Institute for putting together this crucial discussion on decarbonizing Pakistan's textile industry. Before starting, I would also like to acknowledge the great support and, of course, the backing of Ministry of Climate Change and Coordination and this Ministry of Commerce, especially the DG Textile, Mr. Mudassar Raza, who also made a very impressive presentation today for integrating STPI into the Advisory Council on Textile Sustainability and Circularity. And this collaboration is a milestone for collective action. At STPI, we have been closely engaged with the European Union on used textile circularity and decarbonization. We also worked on this very theme with the UNEP, and again, Zainab was taking a lead on it about the used textile in Pakistan. And we also worked on, prepared a report for Switch Asia and European Union on extended producer responsibility, EPR framework, and how this textile sector can be integrated to comply with the EPR framework. Our studies, not only these three that I mentioned, but also our two dedicated units on renewable energy and climate change. Their studies, they have shown that Pakistan's industry is already demonstrating some very promising practices from renewable energy use to water efficient processes. And these are the processes which deserve recognition and support. When it comes to decarbonization of textile sector, we feel it's not just a climate responsibility, it is basically an economic necessity. Whether it is EU's CBAM or this EPR framework or UK's CBAM that UK is planning to roll out from 1st January 2027. And as most of you would have read, that President Trump, who otherwise is a naysayer of climate change, has also instructed his team to examine the CBAM and come up with the CBAM equivalent mechanism for United States. So it would mean that virtually all the export destination for countries like Pakistan would have some sort of CBAM mechanism in place, and Pakistan's textile sector, of course, has to comply with not only this CBAM but also the sustainability standard, CSRD and ESPR. If we don't do it, we will risk losing our competitiveness in our primary markets. And what one can see that our private sector is already working on it. I won't name the groups, but I know that there are certain groups based in Faisalabad and Karachi who are already who have started exploring carbon credits and started exploring green practices so that they can be more CBAM compliant. Now, the real challenge when we look at any policy for decarbonization is that one has to gauge and assess the capacities of small and medium enterprises. So if the objective is to look at the carbon emission across supply chain, we shouldn't forget that it is the SMEs which form a major crucial links in these supply chains, and their capacity building and their technological uplifting as well as their financial assistance, that is very crucial if we really want to implement and if we really want to actually decarbonize our supply chain in textile sector. Without doing so, and especially without this energy transition support, much of what we are aiming to do perhaps would take a longer time. The second important thing here is that we require a credible baseline. If I'm a textile sector today and I adopt all the green practices, how will I actually prove that I've decarbonized myself? The only way to prove is that I should have my baseline before I started adopting these practices, and then once I'm done with everything, then I can again get myself reassessed and I look at my carbon emission, make a comparison, and try to take some attribution for it. Now in Pakistan, we don't have those institutes that can either assess, prepare a baseline, or can verify an internationally accepted certification of my carbon emission. So I will have to go to either Vera or Gold Standard or W Plus or some other international consultants, which again, perhaps their fee in dollars or euros may be affordable for certain units, but then many units will not be able to get it done or to get credit for their practices, which they will be doing in any way. And this is, I think, another area of focus, especially for GIZ, that apart from many other wonderful interventions that are being taken, perhaps we also need to take this initiative to strengthen the capacity of PSQCA or some equivalent bodies that can actually verify this attributable carbon emission reduction. Again, in order to do it, any organization which will be doing it has to be ISO 14065 certified. So this certification in itself is a huge challenge. And in Pakistan, we don't have any organization which is ISO 1406 certified. We have their franchises, but we don't have any organization that can do it. And if that is not the case, then claiming credits in European market for many of the green practices, that would be a daunting challenge. And I think we should look at these. because what I can see, CBAM or no CBAM, the preservation of water and transition to renewable energy, that is something which consumers as well as industrialists in Pakistan, they would automatically do because of the cost of energy, the conventional grid energy, which is now becoming unbearable. So they will have to switch to renewable energy. And because of water conservation practices that Pakistan will be adopting both under Resilient Sustainability Fund facility by IMF, which has a prior condition that Pakistan would monetize water. And due to India's unilateral suspension of Indus Water Treaty implementation. Now, these two things, they will actually force us to adopt water conservation practices. So our industry would be compelled to go greener than many anticipate, not because of any love for climate change only, but also because of these ground realities which shape the political economy of doing business. On top of it, of course, we need to look at how to operationalize Article 6.4 of Paris Agreement for Pakistan's textile manufacturers. STPI is effectively exploring how carbon market and project-based crediting can benefit the sector. But as I told you that this carbon market business, it won't become very effective unless and until we can gauge our emission, we can have indigenous and domestic organizations that can provide support to private sector, both in terms of engaging with international organization as well as try to bring those organizations to Pakistan and build capacity of some of the Pakistani organizations, so that our industry, they have to pay in rupees, not in dollars or euros, which will become another burden on our forex reserves. So with these few words, I'll again thank all the participants and all the panelists for this wonderful discussion. And I hope that we'll be able to take this series further. Back to you, Sobia.
Thank you so much, Abid, and these were really very valuable input. The good news that I think that I can share already is that GIZ is exactly working on those lines of ensuring that there are service providers and also ensuring that there are enough companies here who can audit on the ISO 14605 and other relevant standards. With that, I would like to thank the New Climate Institute. I would like to thank Surajit Iyer. I would like to thank Farheen Zahoor and Sohail Saqib. Saqib Sohail. I'm extremely sorry that there were some technical difficulties that prevented you from sharing your presentation, but we hope to get you back for another session. To all the valuable participants and, of course, my wonderful partners in this collaboration, the Sustainable Development Policy Institute, Zainab, Ubaid, Khalid, and other team, and Abid, thank you so much to you. Have a great evening, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thank you all.
Thank you.